Welcome and thank you for joining us today for MPC, Milwaukee's philanthropic community, where we bring awareness to nonprofit leaders and everyday heroes who are making an impact in our community through their generosity, their purpose, and their impact. Welcome to MPC, Milwaukee's philanthropic community, where we highlight nonprofit leaders and everyday heroes who are making an impact in our community through their purpose, their passion, and their generosity. I'm your host, Jill Economou, and I invite you to join us for a conversation when we learn how our nonprofit guest is making a difference in our community, and you can learn how you can make a difference as well. Some of you may be familiar with the book, The Purpose-Driven Life. I read it a number of years ago, loved it, was very informative, very inspirational. Rick Warren's message was basically life without purpose has no meaning, which reminds me of the quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson that says, in part, the purpose of life is to be useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate, to have it make some difference that you have lived and lived well. Now, I've interviewed hundreds of wonderful nonprofits over the last 8+ years, and what I find really interesting is the story behind the why people have wanted to help others. Why did the nonprofit get started in the first place? What is the origin story? What did that individual or group of individuals go through or experience to make them want to start a nonprofit to help others? I will say that most all of the people that I have interviewed have had a very interesting, compelling, and inspirational story of how they got started. And today is no different. What began as one family's journey grew into a nonprofit dedicated to supporting adults as they build lives filled with connection, purpose, and community. Welcome to the show today, Dr. Samantha Bear, Executive Director of Blossom IDD, whose vision is a world where every adult with intellectual and developmental disabilities has access to community, opportunities, and ongoing guidance throughout all stages of adulthood. Thank you for being here today, Dr. Bear, and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Sam is just fine. We really appreciate you having us.
Okay, you are certainly welcome. I will call you Sam then. Can you start by sharing the story of the first individual or family that helped shape what Blossom is today?
Absolutely. And I loved the quote that you gave because I feel like every nonprofit does have that story. They do have their purpose. And I feel very fortunate that I get to share this family's story. And we, for the last 5 years, have been able to move forward with it and continue to grow. You know, it's a funny story because by trade, I'm actually not a nonprofit executive leader. I always joke that I tell people I truly have no idea what I'm doing. Somehow I'm making it work. But by trade, I'm actually a special education teacher. So I met the Purnells, who are our founders, when their daughter Dakota was my student. I had made my way as an educator through public education, education in the Middle East, or suburban education. And I found myself at a program out in Mequon for people with disabilities on a college campus. And Dakota was there. And as I grew as an educator, I learned more and more about the world of people with disabilities. You know, you go into education with these lofty, very high, save the world, I've got my red cape on. And wow, how quickly we get humbled when we go into the classroom and we realize resources, supports, etc. And it was the same when I got to the college level as well. And it was a beautiful program, but the reality hit in that at the end of the program, that was it. And so our program at the time had a unique bridging program. It was called STEPS, which stood for Successful Transition Exiting Post-Secondary. And it stood for exactly that. We wanted our students to be successful exiting post-secondary schooling. We connected all of our graduates who stayed in the local area with benefits, with resources, really looking at that holistic lifestyle. And I did that with Dakota. And, you know, Cindy and Mike were phenomenal. They came from, Dakota had gone to a Montessori school, phenomenal education, but truly they hadn't really been introduced to what was post-school. It was always the question, what now?
Right.
What's
What
next?
next? Right.
What's going on? And that's really where Blossom founded itself. And they thought to themselves, what if we didn't have this? Would our daughter move back home, work a somewhat part-time job, live with us for forever? And Dakota didn't want that either. She wanted to live on her own and live with her college roommate and live in the community that she was working in and create relationships and build her own life. And that's where Blossom came into play. Purnell's founded the organization and asked me to come on board as the executive director. And we've gone through many seasons in the last 5 years, but we're really, really proud of where we're at now.
I imagine so. And you probably are still very well connected with Dakota.
Yes,
Yes.
I saw her 2 days ago at a program.
Okay, very nice. Well, how and why are you connected to the mission specifically?
The mission. So Blossom truly looks to get individuals connected with those resources. It goes into the bigger issue around people with disabilities in that, in adults with the adult world for people with disabilities, approximately 1 in 4 people has a disability in the United States, and as an adult. And the numbers are even larger than that in youth aged. And the true reality is our system is very siloed and broken apart. And so the mission and what we do with Blossom is to try to put those pieces back together, to create a community that allows individuals to come into it and not feel broken.
Hmm.
Broken not in the sense of who they are in relationship to their disability, but broken in the sense that they don't know what to do next. Going back to that same question, what now?
Right,
I feel
right.
so personally connected to it in that every area of my life that I look, I am surrounded by people with disabilities, whether it's family, friends who have siblings, friends who have family, a friend who is a friend, my own friends with disabilities. And the reality is we all need a little bit more support and more community.
Yeah.
And so I feel really, really lucky that in my role as executive director, we've been able to foster an organization that ties directly to that mission in our everyday life.
And you're allowing them to find that meaning and that purpose
Exactly, just
in
like you
so
had
many different
mentioned,
ways. Right, right.
in their own way, because there
Yes,
is not a one size fits all for
exactly.
anybody.
Right, exactly. Well, let's start with the bigger picture around awareness and needs. I don't think many people realize how large the disability community is. So, can you help us put that into perspective?
Absolutely. So, as I mentioned, 1 in 4 people in adulthood have a disability. That's census data. It comes directly from the national census, as well as broken down all the way into our local populations. In the United States, it's broken down from nationwide to then state, then each individual county, and then from each county into various villages, towns, cities, etc. And one of the things I think people don't understand about disabilities is that it's not all seen on the surface level. There's invisible disabilities, there's visible disabilities, there's cognitive disabilities, there's mobility barriers, hearing barriers, visual barriers. I could go on with over 16 plus different types of disabilities that just are used as identifiers in the K through 12 system. And so that all tracks into adulthood, and it's it's much more profound and it's in everybody's life than they think.
Hmm. Well, you had mentioned before about Dakota when she finished post-secondary school that there was very few, if any,
Yeah,
options. So, what happens to individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities after they leave the school system?
great question. And that goes right into another large systemic issue. It is called what I like to term it as an abyss. It's very fitting for what it is. So, you have individuals with disabilities, they grow up through the K through 12 system. Some people who are adults don't have disabilities when they're younger. That is correct. But the specific population that Blossom works with, intellectual and developmental disabilities, that means that individuals had disabilities from birth and through their development ages. Oftentimes, that means they're supported with pediatricians, places like the Herma Heart Center, special needs clinics. They have occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech and language, neuropsych, psychological, counselors, therapists,
Oh
special ed
my.
teachers,
Wow. Okay.
district administrators, this whole life of birth to 3 through adulthood up till the age of 21. They are entitled to those supports. And then there's this staunch shift from entitled to eligibility. Very few talk about it. Very few understand it. And these families graduate, and it's as if there's a black cliff in front of them.
Mm.
Now, there may be resources in that abyss, and we're very fortunate that where Blossom operates, we are plentiful with resources. How do you access them? How do you know if you're eligible? How do you become eligible? How do you access that eligibility information? How do I pay for it? How do I get connected? What program is there that's a good fit for me? If I don't qualify, are there other programs? I think about all these never-ending questions
Right,
that
right.
even we as adults who are neurotypical have when we graduate from college or when we go into the adult world and have to get jobs and learn how to live independently. Thinking on top of that, the layers of intellectual and developmental disabilities, making that more and more barrier filled, it just amazes me. And so this transition abyss, which the government is combating, I give them credit in that, we've really made a large push in the last 10-15 years to increase transition planning. There are laws in place to make sure that people are compliant and talking about these things prior to graduation. But the barrier remains that a
Mm.
family gets to graduation, and the day after graduation, there's no one. No one's going to call you and say you need to register for this,
Mm-hmm.
or you're required to do this, or in order to receive funding, you need to do these applications. If you're denied, that you can appeal. And so while the Purnells had their, of course, own unique situation with their daughter, as I mentioned, each individual person with a disability has their own story, has their own needs. And so Blossom, one of the areas that Blossom focuses on is combating that abyss and sharing information, sharing resources, getting families all the things they need. And I sit down with families in information and resource sharing, and it amazes me. I have families in tears because they're so grateful that
Mm.
someone is willing to just sit and talk to them
I imagine.
for an hour to 2 hours and
Yeah,
say, these are the things you need to do.
yeah.
This is what you got to get going.
I can see where it would be very, very overwhelming
Yes.
for anyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A lot of us are fortunate, not fortunate, that oftentimes we deal with this system when our parents start to age. A lot of them are the same social system, Social Security income, Medicaid, Medicare, dealing with the aging and disability resource centers, independent living, going from independent living to supported living to long-term care. How do we pay for long-term care? So many people are adults when they're navigating this for their loved ones who are also adults. And I think we very much forget that there's a large 1 in 4 people are navigating this at
Yeah.
the age of 21.
Yeah.
And it's a long time. School brings our students and our participants through 1/3 of their life, if not a quarter of their life, right? Till they're 21. We hope our loved ones live well beyond 60, 70, 80. So we've got the other 2/3 of their life to navigate.
Mm. Hmm. Well, where do you see systems breaking down the most when supporting adults with disabilities?
My professional opinion would be that twofold. I would say it's planning and then the siloed post planning. So, what I mean by that, I think that we as an educational system could really increase transition planning support. I know there's a lot of school districts and educators who are phenomenal having these really difficult conversations when their loved ones or their students turn legally, it's age 16, but best practice 12, 14. Those are hard conversations when you have a mom who's sitting at a meeting and you say, "So is your loved one going to live independently?"
Mm.
I don't know. I'm just trying to get through math class.
Right.
So it's tough to prepare educators for that, to have those conversations, to have great planning and open-mindedness. So that's the pre-planning piece. But I think one of the very difficult pieces post-secondary is that the whole system is siloed. You have to apply for Social Security income the same way you have to apply for job support, the same way you have to apply for long-term care supports. And then you have to find what provider you're going to use. You have to find what fiscal sponsor you're going to use. Then you have to find the actual care providers. And then you have to get them onboarded. And then oh, there you have a life change. they get pregnant and can't continue to be a care provider, you got to find a new care provider.
Mm,
It's it's all systemized and siloed. Every single thing is separate. And it's very difficult for families to keep track of everything, yet alone find it and
yeah.
apply for it.
Right, right.
Um,
They need that assistance that you provide.
and those are just the logistical pieces, right? The who, the what, the how, the
Mm,
money, the funding, the system. We don't even, that's not even to mention what the programs are that can support them. You
mm,
know, is it day programming? Is it physical fitness? Is it therapeutic services?
mhm.
The list goes on and on. You know, I think about it in this way. I think about it, Jill, I go to work and then I come home and I go to the gym. And, maybe every once in a while I'll grab a adult beverage with one of my friends. Maybe a couple more than one. I plan a game night or going to a movie. On the weekend, I see my family. I walk my dogs daily. And my life feels fulfilled. And I navigate all of that on my own.
Mhm.
And even with navigating all of it on my own, I still feel overwhelmed,
Right, right.
right? How do I pay taxes? What's escrow? How do I do that when I buy a house? All these questions that I have to Google or
Mhm.
search online for. And I think about my participants and I know they have a lot of those same questions. And there's a million more barriers in place for them to find those answers.
Right.
So Blossom really, really, really tries to create the community that they may not be able to look online. They may not be able to go out and make a phone call independently without support, but they can talk to a friend or they could reach out to us and send us an email,
Mhm.
or we could set up coffee and we can talk it through.
Mm.
And that's just one of the programs that we offer.
Yeah. Well, and we're gonna get to programs in a little bit, but share with us, because I think it would be interesting for our listeners to understand what are some of the misconceptions that people have about independence for adults with IDD?
That is a really, really great question. And I'm so happy you said that. So, one of the things that I often explain to people when they're looking at Blossom to see if it's a good program or if I'm speaking or have any other engagements, I look back at the United States and in the 1970s, which is not that long ago, we had very few resources. Two of the most predominantly used resources were keeping people with disabilities at home or going to hospitals and asylums. And that was it. Right? And we're now 50, 60 years later, and here we are. And the world of disabilities is a spectrum. I like to say that we have individuals who are at nursing home level of care requirement, meaning one-to-one, high medical needs, potentially will need lifelong support and can't do things independently, all the way to the other end of the spectrum, which is potentially a nearly complete independence with a disability. They may have a visible or an invisible disability, but they work 40 hours a week, they drive, they navigate life. And then there's everywhere in between of the spectrum.
Mhm.
And that's often where a lot of participants with Blossom lie. Some individuals live completely independently in their own apartment or a home that they themselves have purchased or a family member has purchased for them. Some individuals live with families. Some live in a group home. Some live in an adult family home. Some individuals are highly social and want to be out and engage and they want to be with their peers. And other individuals could care less, but they know they can't be isolated all the time and just be at home. Our introverted participants are the best. Some of our participants are driving, some are not. Some are going to adult day programs, which is typically anywhere between 8 to 9 a.m. until 2 to 4 p.m. And they provide care supports and they do programs. And other people don't want that. They would like to go and make their own a la carte style programming. I think the largest misconception is that disabilities are what we've seen historically in movies and videos and TV shows, which is changing. It's morphing. It used to be that someone with autism was completely nonverbal and had somewhat of flapping hands or vocalizations, or someone with Down syndrome who have the typical features of someone with Down syndrome, or cognitive disabilities mean they can't do anything, they need help all the time. And that's just simply not the case anymore.
Right.
I'm glad because we're eons beyond that. But one of the most beautiful things I learned when I was working at the college is the blessing of choice. And in the 70s and earlier, people with disabilities did not have choice. They were told what and where and how to do things. And it just is a blatant violation of their civil rights. Now we have so much choice. When I was at the college and I saw another college opening in Wisconsin and then another one opening in Wisconsin, man, my marketing team must have hated me because I always said, you need to shop around, make sure we're the right fit. Like, you get to choose your college. And I say the same thing at Blossom. I say, guys, we're going to come together and we're going to break down all these barriers and you get to choose how you live your life. And yes, sometimes that's with support with parents or guardians or siblings, but oftentimes it's autonomous decisions that they get to make and we get to walk that path with them.
Well, you're dealing with, as you said, all different types of individuals on the spectrum. I imagine tons of different personalities.
Oh my goodness. Oh my
Um,
gracious.
What you shared with me that you have a brand personality. How does Blossom's personality shape how you show up for the people that you serve?
It's a great question, and I'll provide a little bit of fun background regarding our personality. So recently, at the beginning of 2026, and back it up about 6, 7 months, we started looking at Blossom as a brand and said, who are we and what do we want to be for the next 5, 10, 15 years? I think organizations go through evolution. When we were founded by the Purnells, we were one thing and we were focused on that story and telling that beautiful story. And now we've grown into telling the story of our participants and our families and our community. And we thought it warranted the opportunity to say, okay, let's give ourselves a little haircut and a facelift. And we did. And poor Jordan, who works with us through our marketing and design, she's one of our board members and collaborators. And we got stuck on colors. Oh my goodness, Jill, it was a nightmare. Poor Jordan I said, we were sitting at our team meeting, well, that's too salmon-y. That looks very mom-like. And that looks like we're going to a playground. And Jordan was able to morph and say, okay, so what I'm hearing you say is you're not childlike and you don't want to have it that we're mothering our participants, or that this isn't just a free for all of fun and engaging activities. This is growth and development. And I said, yeah, that's exactly what I was
what you
saying.
said.
But when we got stuck on our colors, it really, really allowed me the opportunity to think, how are we showing up for our participants? What are we evoking when someone goes to our website or sees our social media or pops into our office and is looking at us, not only as a brand, but as an entity? What do we want them to feel? And that's how we show up. We want people to feel welcomed. We want people to feel the warmness that we protrude in our daily activities. We want people to feel engaged, but we also want people to feel like they have the autonomy and independence to decide and have a sense of maturity. We started from one almost crises of a family of, oh my goodness, what now, into it's okay to ask what now, and we'll figure it out together.
Yeah.
And that's truly what we do on a daily basis. So our mood personality, our mood brand, while it was funny because it came through colors and fonts and a questionnaire of, let's look at, I remember she put out all these words on the table and said, what is Blossom? I said, girl, these are like 30 of these. That's what we are. And we went through the process, and the one card came off and I was like, well, but I like that card because, and so then we put it back. That was the longest. And it really made sure that all of us as a staff and a board are truly intentional every day when we do show up. We don't want to belittle people with disabilities, nor our participants. We want to invoke autonomy and independence and consent and assent. We want people to know that they're adults. We're showing up. We have high expectations for our participants, but also you should have high expectations for us.
Right.
And
And of yourself.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's mutually exclusive.
Right.
And we kind of embody that at the board level, at the staff level, participants, and their families and extended families. And I think that drives us to show up that way every day.
Very good. Very good.
It was quite the process. Let me tell you, it was a pistol and a half, but I'm so happy with the final result.
It's done, and now you got what you needed. And
You wouldn't believe, down to the pedals. Well, this pedal is facing down. Could we have it facing up? Because down seems so sad and up seems so
wow,
energetic. And
wow. But
it,
there's a lot of thought that goes into that
correct,
because, again, you ideally want a lot of people checking you out and
correct,
understanding what makes you different.
right.
What is it that you really do? How do you show up for your participants, as you say?
And I love that you hit the nail on the head. And part of that process, as I go back and I recall what we went through, and it's similar to what we've gone through in almost every team meeting, every strategic plan, is who are we and how are we different?
Mm-hmm.
Not different. And people say that, well, how are you different from this organization? How are you different from that organization? And when someone says different, I don't know why it triggers in my head what I hear what makes you better, or
Mm,
how are you doing it better, or why should we go to you instead of going to them? That's kind of what I, on the sidelines, hear in the back of my head when someone asks me that. And it really makes me sit down and think. And so part of our process when we were going through branding is Jordan had this great exercise where we had a T chart, and it was, which ones are therapeutic and enjoyable, which ones are rec and leisure and independence, which ones are clinical and service oriented, and which ones are work and for, there were all these different divisions. And we looked at the different organizations in our network, and it was really cool to see that Blossom is very unique in our area. And when people ask me, going back to the same question, how are you different? What are you doing that's different from these people?
mm-hmm.
I say we're not that different. We have the same beautiful population that we work with,
Right.
but we love at Blossom that we are in addition to, not instead of.
Mm,
Our participants do all of those programs, and
mm-hmm.
we want them to.
Right.
We
Right.
encourage them to.
Yeah.
You should be engaged. You should be in the community. You should have different networks, Special Olympics, and adult day programming, and individualized workout plans, and therapy, and mental health supports. All of it. You
Yeah.
should do all of it.
Yeah.
You know why? Because you have the option to.
Exactly. And why not? I
Exactly.
mean, I like to say we don't compete, we
Correct.
complete.
That
Uh,
is amazing.
I mean, the idea that there's enough for everybody. I mean, everybody
Absolutely.
does great work. You just do what you do and do it well,
Mm-hmm.
and you serve the people that the people will come to you, or you go out and meet the people, and it'll all come together
Exactly.
in the way it should. Well, Blossom IDD's vision, as I shared at the beginning of the show, is for a world filled with purpose, meaning, and connection for those that you serve. When we return, Dr. Bear is going to share what that looks like at Blossom and how they specifically show up for the people they serve. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Milwaukee's philanthropic community is brought to you by Ellen Becker Investment Group. This year, EIG celebrates 30 years of thoughtful growth, personalized service, and community impact. From a kitchen table vision to a boutique wealth management firm, EIG has always put people first, offering transparent advice, fiduciary care, and education that empowers families for generations. To learn more, visit ellenbecker.com.
Welcome back to MPC, Milwaukee's philanthropic community. I'm your host, Jill Economou, and my guest today is Dr. Samantha Bear, Executive Director from Blossom IDD. So, Sam,
Yes.
tell us how Blossom's vision for a world filled with purpose and meaning and connection, how is that accomplished for those that you serve?
It's a great question. I always joke that truly, when we started our organization, we had the board sit down and we were looking at our vision, and the whole board said, "Well, isn't the goal to not exist?" I don't think we can put that down, everybody.
Put yourself out of business, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And but truly that is our goal at Blossom. I mean, we would love to have communities that are inclusive and self-sustainable, and systems that allow people to flourish. We have a little bit of ways to go, but that's the ultimate goal, right?
Mm,
And I think I think it speaks to what Blossom does, and we're really looking at bridging that gap. I talked formerly about this abyss, and I would love to envision Blossom as somewhat of a bridge, and we're filling that gap. We're not closing the pillars together to close the mountain. We're not putting glue in there to make a seam. We're just filling that gap. A lot of our individuals, as I mentioned, have holistically fulfilled lives. But at the end of the day, there's a significant rate of mental health concerns and isolation within this population. And nights and weekends and everywhere in between, along with the sense of belonging and community, are a huge barrier for our community members. A lot of times their community is their family. And we at Blossom believe that a community is much larger than that. It's your neighbors. It's the people you go to programs with. It's the people in the restaurants that you attend nights and weekends when you're going out for a beverage or out to eat. And Blossom really wants to fulfill that vision while living out our mission by filling that gap, filling it from the ground up, truly, truly bridging the void.
Well, and I love the name. I mean, the name speaks to that, I think. You're
Correct.
helping these individuals to blossom
Mhm.
into ultimately who they were designed and created to be.
Absolutely.
So walk us through a day in the life at Blossom.
Yeah.
What does it actually look like for the individuals and the families you serve?
Good question. So I mentioned earlier what I like to do with my nights and weekends and things that I have going on in my life. And that is a day in the life of Blossom, right? We really try to focus on all areas of human development: physical, mental, social, volunteering and contribution or work, as well as every other little piece of the puzzle. So when Blossom first started, I looked at my own social calendar and then I literally mirrored it. I said, okay, tonight I'm going out for happy hour with my friends. We made a happy hour program. So, it was those conversations and educating the community. How does a person with a disability safely drink? Well, first of all, they're a human. They can drink. Do they have proper ID? What do they need to drink? What if they don't want to drink, but they still want to be social? How do you order an NA drink? So I started looking at my social calendar and mirrored that. Happy hours, movies out. And then we got deeper and we thought, okay, what about wellness? How are they physically active? How are you mentally, emotionally stabilizing your life? Then we thought more social. Okay, do we want to go to a movie? Do we want to have a walking club? This next upcoming week, we are doing a program down in Milwaukee at All Boatworks.
Oh, yeah. I've had them on the show.
They're phenomenal.
Yeah.
I listen to the podcast.
Thank you for that. Yes. Great organization. Yep.
And so that is also it. A day in the life is connecting them with other organizations, like our pickleball or like Happy Place Cooking Space that does cooking for all abilities. So that way, outside of Blossom, they can access restaurants, bars, social locations, different organizations, different programs. We really want to bridge that barrier so then that they can cross that bridge by themselves. And we completely continue to grow and expound upon that. Somehow we ended up in Hawaii. Not somehow, the participants wanted it. So one of the areas we do is travel.
Nice.
And I don't know about you, but in my 20s, I traveled a lot and I learned a lot about myself. I spent my entire savings and then some. So, time management, money management, flexible thinking, cultural sensitivity, all those amazing executive functioning skills that people without disabilities usually navigate through life experiences. People with disabilities don't always have access to those, as individuals see them as not being able to do it independently or without support. Where does their support come from? It usually comes from families.
Right.
Well, I know when I travel with my dad, that man does not let go of any of our passports. He holds them like dear life in the airport. And it's the same for our participants. Do they pay for meals? Probably not. Do they have to figure out a tip? Nope, dad does it or mom does it. Do they have to worry about what to pack? No, mom's doing it with them or sister's helping them pack. So when we do travel experiences, oh my gosh, our participants, that's half of what we do for 6 months prior is they get all excited about it. And that is a day in the life, living through programs in their local community while looking ahead to amazing experiences. And then we step off the plane and they tell me what they want to do next. Wouldn't it be cool if we went to Japan? Yeah, guys, let's budget for it.
Well, we love to hear impact stories, and you've been
Yes.
sharing these little nuggets throughout the interview, which is great. But do you have a particular story that captures the kind of impact that Blossom has had on someone's life? You
Yeah.
talked to us about Dakota,
Yep.
but maybe share a short story of another participant.
So oh my goodness, when you asked me that question and when I thought of it, I think of every single individual participant and their unique stories, which is amazing. But I'll go back to my OG, and I know his mom is always comfortable with me sharing. Our participant Liam was also my student when I was in college with him, and I'll never forget. Liam loved technology, and I left him on Friday before going home for the weekend, and he was hanging out in his dorm room just with some snacks, gaming. And I get a call from the staff, and they say, we need you to come back. And I was like, guys, it's Sunday. Can this wait till Monday? And they said no. And I come back, and Liam was in that same spot I left him on Friday with tons of snacks and his technology. And I said, what the heck am I going to do here?
Liam.
Literally, fast forward to today. Liam lives completely independently in his own apartment. He has
Wonderful.
for years. He has a 2-bedroom apartment that formerly he had a live-in support with, that the live-in support moved on. And mom and I worked together to get him appropriate assistive technology, to get him some supports, to make sure he has holistic programming. Mom and family are phenomenal, and his tribe just picks him up figuratively, not literally. He has 3 different jobs that he holds down. The man comes to every single program. He, for the life of me, I don't know why he keeps signing up for pickleball. He sits on the side and watches, but he always signs up. I mean, pick up the paddle, guy. Like, go play. But he just loves being with his community. And I tell you, if you had told me that 6 years ago when I walked in there that weekend on a Sunday morning and I saw him sitting there, never in my life would I have thought that this man would be such a success. But it just goes to show that when he has the tools and the tribe behind him and the support and the options, and he had that intrinsic desire to be successful and independent, that he does it. He does it. He's the first one to fill up his suitcase and come to travel with us. He's the first one to call me out and call me a helicopter support person. I'm a little offended, but also wear it with a badge of pride.
You're like, yep, yeah, I am.
Exactly. We have a potluck at his house, and I'm like, Liam, you should have cleaned up. He's like, get over it, Sam. I cleaned up with my support worker. I'm fine. It's okay, all right. It's your apartment.
And I'm sure you have a ton of other stories like that.
Literally,
and we could
every
spend
single one.
hours. Yeah, yeah.
And it's fun because it's not something you see. It's in our worlds, it's all delayed gratification. When I'm sitting in a classroom talking about executive functioning, money management, helping them work through a tip calculator on an app, and I don't see them until 6 years later when I go out for watering club, out to eat for brunch, and they pull out that same tip calculator. I almost cried. I was like, this is cool.
Yeah.
It's cool. And now it's a tool that they show every other participant how to use. And those tools are tools that make them successful for life. And I think that's a really strong success.
And it's beautiful to be a part of that. I'm
my
sure.
gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Well, let's talk about partners.
Yes.
Because we know that
I've mentioned it a bunch.
yeah, you've talked a little bit about it, but just do not a real deep dive, but just share a little bit about how your partnerships expand opportunities for participants in ways that you couldn't do alone.
Again, we go through that bridge. I have a very strong philosophy in that I am not going to reinvent the wheel, right? We have beautiful day programs. Let's support and collaborate with them. We have beautiful fitness facilities. We have programs that support that. I'm not a fitness instructor. My expertise are disabilities and special education supports. I don't need to go and do a fitness class. Let's partner with them.
Right. Someone does, they do it well. So
Correct.
yes.
Let's not reinvent the wheel. I also think it's a dual function in that if we can bridge the access to that amazing resource, that means that participants and families now know what it looks like. They've been familiar in the space. They know the cost structure. They know who the people are to connect with. They know exactly what it looks like. In our organization, I usually have our participants do what I like to call a no thank you bite, when we go out to eat, if they order something and they're like, oh, this is not what I thought it would be, and I'm not going to eat this. I said, well, you're paying for it, so you have to do a no thank you bite.
Uh,
You try it, and if you don't like it after you try it, that's okay.
mm-hmm.
But you're paying for it anyway, so give it a
Right.
try.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's the same with our programs. You know, you want to try pickleball, you want to go to a cooking class, you want to go to a gym, you want to go down into Milwaukee and do axe throwing. Great. If it's not your thing afterwards, no big deal. No harm, no
Right.
foul. But
But you've
maybe
tried it. Yeah.
we had a participant who loved we had, there was formerly an arcade that we went to. It was at a mall and very sensory overstimulating. And at first they were like, this is absolutely not my thing. I want to get the heck out of here. And they just sat at the entrance and waited for the program to end.
Oh.
And then I was invited to their birthday at the arcade. I said, well, what do you mean?
Wait a second. I thought.
Exactly. So, you know, after the time to decompress and process and figure out how they felt about the experience, they actually realized they liked it and they wanted to do it more, but on their own time.
Mm.
And I think that's exactly what it is with our programs and collaborations. Some we do on our own, but majority we love to collaborate with organizations, businesses, restaurants, bars, etc.
Well, and I'm hearing again this theme all throughout our interview of belonging and how
Yes.
important that is.
Yes.
Elaborate on that a little bit in terms of belonging compared to participation.
Absolutely. So we had a participant who was, again, a former student, and we've now shifted to most of our participants are no longer my former student. It's a new area for me. But this student had done very similar to Dakota, moved into the area, and then her family dynamic changed. They were thinking about moving out of state, and she genuinely came to me at a program. We were all out for coffee and said, I just don't know what to do. And I said, well, you can always move with your family that, if they're important to you. And she's like, right, but I have my job here and my apartment and my Blossom community and my work community. And it really hit home that she felt that she belonged in that space.
Yeah.
And that it wasn't just going to an activity to check it off her list and to fill her schedule. That was her community. And people are moving physically to different areas to sense that and feel less isolated and feel like they belong more.
Mm.
And I mean, we all know there's so many heightened benefits from a sense of belonging: decreased isolation, decreased mental health barriers, increased physical activity, socialization. Oh my gosh, I don't have enough breath to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah.
But being an organization that's allowed to create that sense of belonging for someone and to foster the environment that they feel that they belong there and they're a part of a community, part of something bigger than them, is really special.
Mm. Well, I imagine so. I mean, it makes me think of the idea of going to a party compared to being invited to a party.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you get an invitation that goes out to a ton of people, and you say, I'm going to go to that party, versus somebody reaching out to you specifically
Are
and
you
saying,
going?
yes, are you going?
Do you want to walk
Come with me.
together?
Yes.
Can we carpool?
Yeah, come
Do you
with
want to
me.
go out
Let's
to
do
eat
this together.
before?
Exactly. Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
hitting exactly the nail on the head. People graduate from school and they're in this terrified what now stage. And a year into Blossom, they're going to the movies together. They're walking up the street. My participant coordinator was just out doing coffee and she ran into 3 participants, 2 who were shopping together. One was on their way to work.
Mm.
One was on their way home from work. Isn't that community?
Yeah.
They feel as if they belong.
Exactly.
And they do belong there.
Yeah, they're connecting, and that's wonderful.
It's great.
Well, you've talked about how Blossom has grown a little bit. What do you think has fueled that growth? And what are you most proud of?
I think that what's fueled the growth is decreasing that feeling of abyss.
Mm.
This black, scary space that you walk into. No one wants to walk through that door. So if there's an option to not walk through that door, yeah, the people will take it and they will grasp onto it for dear life. And then they feel more confident. And I think that's what's caused us to grow. And I think that's what's caused the ecosystem of nonprofits in our area to grow, is that there's a need and people are filling barriers and needs left and right. And it's phenomenal. It's great. I would have to say my favorite part of it is the growth in community, seeing our community. One of my favorite events is our annual fundraiser. We always do it once a year. We're a small nonprofit, so it's a huge portion of our revenue, and we really put all of our eggs in our basket. And our community shows up, not because we need money. Every nonprofit needs money. Let me just give that general plug.
We say it all the time.
Every
yes.
nonprofit needs funding. The money makes the world go round. I won't negate that. But they don't show up because they're going to give money, because many of our families don't or can't. They show up because this is the community that they've invested in.
Yeah.
And we want to celebrate that. So in lieu of doing just a regular fundraiser, we do a concert. We do dinner. Well, it's morphed into dinner now that we have a bigger community. We do a celebration of all of our programs. We, of course, do some fundraising. And then we just have an 1.5-hour concert where our community just jams out.
Nice.
And it's great. Families are there. Siblings are there. Community partners are there. Our board, our staff, and most importantly, our participants.
There's a lot of connecting going
Exactly.
on.
A lot of belonging. It's a huge sense of belonging.
Yeah.
And that's my favorite part. So besides creating community, filling that void, I would say one of the favorite, most stressful times of the year is our fundraiser. But it's my favorite when we're finally in it and I can see it all come to fruition.
Yeah, I imagine. Well, tell us what's next. Give us an idea next, let's say 3 to 5 years.
Great question. So we're presently 2026. That means we're about 2 years into our last strategic plan, 3 years. We'd love to finish that out, finish up a lot of our large task items, which we're really focused on sustainability. As an educator, when I've left positions, it's been devastating to see programs not continue to rise to the standard that I left them in. And that was my biggest fear with Blossom. Life happens, people come in, people go out, board members change, staff change. And we wanted Blossom to be a rock, a sustainable operation. And that's what I see in the next 5 years. We are already looking into 2027 and 2028 for travel experiences and planning ahead. And I see us there. I see us with, right now we have a nice 3 to 6 month runway. I see us with a 1 to 2 year to 3 year runway of programs and planning and operational status. And for me, that would be some serious success. I'd love to say we would grow. I think every organization yearns for that. And I won't negate that yearning, but I more so yearn for sustainability for our participants, that we can be something they can count on.
Yeah. Because again, that's so important that you're there for them. Even if the number of participants doesn't grow, you have this base of people that you are in connection with, in relationship with, providing so many different great services to them. You want to be able to, as you say, sustain that, that for them.
In our first 2 years, we grew 333% in our numbers between participants and families. And I had to say, whoa, let's pump the brakes, because we want to make sure that we can provide that quality.
Yes.
And sustainable operations. So yes, we may have more consistent programming. Instead of every other Monday, we may shift to every Monday. We may shift to having, instead of 1 full-time, 2 or 3 full-time. Those, of course, I think are opportunities for growth with our organization. But most important to me and the board, and I would also echo our community, is that the level of excellency stays the same.
Yeah.
And it's sustainable.
Yeah. Well, we've come to the close of our time together, unfortunately, because we could go on and on and on, but we want to make sure that we share what your greatest need is, because we never know who's listening. There may be potential donors out there. There might be people who want to volunteer, advocate for your organization. What would you say is your greatest need right now?
I would say our greatest need, outside of our obvious plug for financial support continuously. Let me say that directly. No, I would say our 2 greatest needs, in full truth, that also align with our strategic plan, is collaborative and programmatic collaborations. So for example, like our organizations that we're currently partnering with, those came to us through the grapevine, and we adore them, and we want to continue those. And that's not just with organizations, it's with local businesses who'd be willing to have us, or different bars or venues or concerts. We just got a beautiful invitation to go to a sensory-friendly ballet. Those are collaborations that we cherish, and we would love to continue to grow those. That's a huge need for us. Secondary to that, one of our biggest strategic goals is to create more partnerships with businesses. And, of course, I mean businesses in the programmatic sense, but I more so mean businesses in lunch and learns, sponsorships for our annual event, really creating that expanded advocacy and knowledge in the business area. We definitely function in the higher educational programmatic sphere. And I think we're at the point where we want to expand into more business sponsorships and connections with businesses. For example, we are in a printing crisis. Man, color printing is expensive. Oh my goodness. And I said I would really love to establish a partnership with a business that provides that resource that, sure, we can pay for that printing, but that we know we can count on them to create that long-term relationship with. And similar to how we build relationships with our participants, we would love to start to build that with businesses.
Okay. So if you're a business out there and
Please.
you are looking to partner, you have something that you think Blossom could use, you have a talent that you'd like to share with Blossom, reach out. I want to thank you for visiting with us today,
Yes,
Dr.
thank you for
Samantha
having
Bear,
me.
Executive Director from Blossom IDD. I appreciate you sharing the story, the origin story, and sharing all the great ways that you make a difference for the population that you serve. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Before we leave, and you can find this information in our show notes, but just what is the best way for people to connect with you?
Great question. I know that my immediate contact information will be there, but I always say the best way to connect with us is directly through our website. There's a contact us page on there. It has all of my contact information and our teams and our boards information. But otherwise, our social media pages give us a really great opportunity to storytell what we're doing, where we are, who we're doing it with. So those two places would be the best place to connect with us.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you again for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
You are certainly welcome. And I encourage you to stay tuned next week for new episodes that drop every Thursday morning to hear how other great nonprofits like Blossom IDD are making a difference in our community. And you can learn how you can make a difference as well using your time, your talents, and your treasure. So whether you're at home, whether you're out in the community, at work, to find a way to be a blessing and give a blessing. So think about that and have a great week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Milwaukee's Philanthropic Community, brought to you by Ellen Becker Investment Group. If something in today's conversation resonated with you, share it with a friend or family member. And if you haven't already, subscribe so you never miss an episode. At Ellen Becker Investment Group, we believe education and community impact go hand in hand. That's why we love bringing you thoughtful insights from leaders and organizations who care deeply about making a difference in Milwaukee and beyond.
Please note, this podcast is intended for general informational purposes and to highlight philanthropic efforts in our community. The opinions and missions expressed on MPC do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Ellen Becker Investment Group employees and leaders. For more resources, visit ellenbecker.com. We'll see you next time.